right, hello. So, yeah, Saturday, it's like almost 5 in the evening. I thought I had a shit ton of energy, which I actually do. But we also have a 3-year-old, and that 3-year-old is in a insane tantrum phase. It's oh my god, and it's so exhausting. It's insanely exhausting. And I can't remember this phase with our first one, who's 7 now. They are different, so maybe he has like a worse time doing this phase. And it's not the first one, and it's not the last one. But OMG, it's freaking exhausting. So let's see. So I'm finally here. Hopefully, we'll get maybe an hour, and I have a glass of wine here, and hopefully, this will be fun. So, impact, which we've been exploring, is in a release candidate, and today I just added the debugger. We'll add that as well. See how that works. But I created a branch here of CodeSandbox, or the editor, and what we're gonna do is just go to the V2 editor, and we're going to add impact app and impact debugger, I think. Let's see. We're going to take a look at, so the point is that we already have a very compatible structure where we have this thing called features. Now the point of like these features, they are oh, hi Siggy. So these features, they are split up into separate contexts, and the reason they are in separate contexts is because of performance. Because if any state changes within any of these features, any component consuming that feature will reconcile. So that's why we have all these different contexts. So we have like, yeah, Happy New Year, Siggy. Hope you're doing good and had a nice celebration. We did, well, we had a really nice celebration. But talking about kids, our 7-year-old, you know, these, I don't know what you call them in English. Like it's this stick where you have like sparkly, fireworky stuff on the end, and then it, anyways, you can swivel them. And of course, our 7-year-old swiveled it and hit her like her eye. Like she was super, super lucky. She didn't get it in her eye. But yeah, it kind of made a. This is going to be. You remember that New Year's Eve when Emma almost got blind, kind of thing. Anyways, but it's been good. Anyways, yeah. So these features, they live within their own context. So we have like a shit ton of context providers to expose these, and it just doesn't feel good. But this is exactly what impact will help us with, because it's reactive. So it doesn't matter how much we put into the reactive context of impact. It's all based on signals, and whatever you access that's in a component, the specific signals, those will make the component reconcile. So what I see happening here is that features aren't contexts anymore. They are just features. And then we have like one context representing, for example, like the editor context, where we compose all these features together. And then you will consume everything from a single hook, and that's perfectly fine because, as I said, it's what you access within that context that decides when the component reconciles. But what I wanted to do as a fun thing here is to try to find one of these features, and we're going to try to just refactor it to impact. And it shouldn't be like a huge thing. Maybe the search is a good one. Yeah, I think maybe search is a good one because it, yeah. Let's do search. Okay. How should we approach this? So we have feature. Okay, I think I'm just gonna call it search. Yeah. What we're gonna do is import context from impact app. And then I'm not sure if we'll actually get to anything running, so we can look at the debugger if we have time for that. But let's see. So we have this context, so we'll export. Let's just call it use search. I think that's what we actually export it as. Oh, is that true? Search provider. Yeah, use search. So we'll still do that. And we'll put that into context. And now we have, and this is kind of nice because we can see how they kind of differ. Let's split this up. So let's move this around a little bit. So this is create hook context. This is a normal React context. And this is the impacts reactive context. And the main, like the first thing is that this context scope will only run once as it's reactive. While in React, that context can, that scope is part of the reconciliation loop and might run multiple times. So what's interesting here is the state we're using. I'm gonna try to see. Okay, so this is nice. This is a really good one to do the first refactor with, because we basically just have different states here. So the like we don't have multiple explicit states. We only have this ready state. And the question is, what signals? I would assume, yeah, let's just optimize the hell out of this. So we're going to use a signal per per state here. So let's call it results, which will be a signal of protocol. Let's see. This light is pretty. I have this. What's it called? Elgato light. How do I? Isn't this the? Oh, that's even stronger. Can't I make it? Hey, Tommy. Let's. Godt nyttår, Tommy. I was actually thinking about calling you. It was on my mind to call you on New Year's Eve. But yeah, I just talked about how Emma, she, the stjerneskudd, she'd swiveled it and almost hit like inside her eye, but it was just on the outside, but it got a little bit dramatic on New Year's Eve. Everything's good now, though. But yeah, I guess that's not like, it's just an excuse. I don't know. You get to this point where, yeah, for anyone else, Tommy and me, we worked together for a long time ago, and then we had this thing calling each other on New Year's Eve, and then that kind of faded away, but we didn't stop thinking about calling each other, right? That's the important thing. Let's see. So we have term. I guess that's a string. Case sensitivity. Oh my god, this is a little bit boring. Hopefully we can get this done pretty fast. Oh, what did I do? bring that in. I wonder why can case sensitivity be... Well, this is interesting. Why aren't I getting errors? Can case sensitivity be... Oh, it can be undefined. Okay. Yeah, it's the thought that counts. So include... is there an easier way for me to do this? Let's do this and see if I can. Const include signal of string. Oh, Why does it allow it to be... Like, I'm saying it should be a string. I wonder if this is the typing of impact. Oh yeah, I think this is a bug in the... Yeah, why do I have this thing? Oh, I remember. Okay, this is interesting. If I don't add an initial value... Yeah, I should change that. I remember why I did this. So the point is, if you actually have an initial value, we have type checking. If you don't have an initial value, we use... So if you do add a value later, it will be typed correctly, but it can also be undefined. Yeah, but maybe that's fine. Okay, let's just continue. Let's see how that evolves. And then glob. So signals is the new thing. This is what everyone's doing now. And it's not a new thing, but it's the thing. And with impact, we could... Oh, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna use a... No, we're not going to do that. Like, we could use a store instead, which would simplify the... which would simplify this. We wouldn't have to create all these signals explicitly. But we're not going to do that. And what's the public? So we have these like public actions, which are dispatches, but now we're going to do... let's just call it the same. But now there are going to be actual methods. Do search ID. Interesting. Term string. Set case sensitivity. OMG. And then we have set... Oh my god, this is boring. It's gonna be more fun when we get to the actual logic and see how that changes. Yeah, good question. So the store, I have the documentation for it here. So the store is just an accessible abstraction. So as you can see here, instead of me like creating the lower level individual signals as we do here, I could just create a store and use an object, and every key in that object would become a signal. So even here, when I want to expose the results, I'm going to expose them like this, results.value, because that's the signal value. So I'm on a lower level now, where I'm explicitly defining the signals at the whatever granular level I want, and I also then manually expose them. But with a store, I could just do search store. I could just do store results and then blah blah blah, and then I could just return search store, and I can have everything here like do search and all this stuff. And if I wanted to derive something, I could do like get one result. and then just this results. Like and that will be derived, lazily evaluated, and all that stuff. So you just, the point of impact after a lot of discussions, it's like it started with this low level signals handling, the contexts and all that stuff. And then I discussed with my colleagues that libraries should really have at least like not two APIs, but two levels of abstraction. So you have one level of abstraction, which like is the most flexible, can solve any scenario kind of thing, but it's like it's harder to understand it because it's like more involved in terms of maybe there are like multiple APIs you combine together and all that stuff. But then you should ideally have, even if it's just for educational purposes, just have a higher abstraction that gets you going fast. And then you can learn more how it works under the hood by just like consuming it and playing around with it. And that's kind of the idea here, is that in the tutorial, even here, I'm introducing it as like 3 levels of abstraction and also like complexity handling, where like that this is the thing that annoys me with a few state management tools. Is that, well, it doesn't annoy me about the state management tool, but in general, like you see these really nice APIs for doing global state management or shared state management, and they typically look something like this, right? And that works like it gets you going, but it so quickly breaks down if you have somewhat of a complex application. But so the global store is built on underlying lower level APIs. And maybe this is enough for you. And as I say here, this is like very close to, like, is it called Jotai and Zustand, where you kind of just get into it. But then your application increases in complexity. You need to do more stuff in terms of state management. And that's where you kind of get into this composing of stores. You start namespacing or put your state management in different domains. And now you use global context instead of global store, and you use store. And now you have access to other APIs like effect to deal with things like doing stuff reactively when the state changes, blah, blah, blah. And then at the most raw level, and where you have the most flexibility, you have what we're playing around with now, which is context and signal. And this is where you provide state management to a component tree instead of globally. And you use typically signals instead of stores to get like maximum flexibility and granularity in dealing with signals and optimizations. And like I don't see there be any like deeper level of abstraction than this. That wouldn't make sense. So, or at least that's the theory of this. Set filter exclude string. Toggle is regex. Search. Okay, so this is interesting. This has been, I don't think these should be public. These should happen internally. So that's already interesting. Like we're actually only exposing the public stuff here. So I'm going to finish this boring work. I'm afraid this stream is going to be just kind of setting things up. But maybe we'll get into it. Include. And the thing is, like, you get some stuff out of the box here. So for example, when you have these state stores, you don't want them to be changed from the outside. You want that to happen explicitly. And so what we're doing here is that instead of returning the signal, we return a getter, which gives you the value of the signal. So that means when you consume this search store or search context, You just say search.results, search.term, and you get the value. But that means, and it's being observed and everything. But that also means if you try to change the term, like search.term equals something, it will error because it's a getter. So you just get native read-only, really, of your state store, which is nice. And this you get for free if you use the store abstraction. But yeah, as I said, I am not sure how that you would do that in an actual application. Like, would you make a choice? No, I want the like lowest level API of impact and we'll stick with that. So everything are signals and contexts. Or would you say, no, if it makes sense to create a store, or maybe it start with a store and then you refactor to signals if things get too complex? I don't know. Yeah, so this is really interesting. We're going to use, so Impact also allows you to use data fetching patterns, like new data fetching patterns with React. So we actually wouldn't do things like searching as a Boolean. It would actually be the promise that does the search, which is going to be interesting. But let's just expose it for now, and then we'll take a look. Okay, nice. So we have everything in there. Let's get back to the actual logic, and we'll put that logic over here. Okay, so we are setting up the initial values here. So it's searching false, term. I guess all of these are like empty things. Is regex false, search ID. Oh, that's interesting. What's search ID? Yeah, that's something we can check out. Oh, case sensitivity. Oh, yeah. That's disabled. Cool. So one thing that won't work here is that we can't use the React context. I think I haven't actually tested this. I didn't, because you wouldn't like. Oh, yeah. Let me show you. Hi, by the way. Hi, Faust. Yeah, so Impact is really. So I've been working on like different state management tools and also smaller, like I guess you could kind of call them frameworks, but also some tools, and it's like an everlasting iteration. But Impact is kind of the latest based on the experiences from moving away from like a state management framework like Overmind, which I worked on, and kind of trying to embrace React and see what happens. And then experiencing the benefits of embracing React, and then also being aware of, yeah, exactly, cerebral. So Impact is much closer to, is close to, at least conceptually, to cerebral and Overmind. It's just that it gives you, it's way less complex in terms of API surface and opinions, which is good and bad. Like the feedback I often got with Cerebral and also Overmind is like you have these core concepts of like state, actions, and effects, and there were very explicit APIs. But with Cerebral, you had like signals and sequences and stuff. Anyways, the point is that there are like three things you need to do. You need to have state. You need a way to change that state, and you also need a way to like talk to the outside world, which is typically called effects. And Impact doesn't have that strong of an API surface towards those concepts. So I think cerebral and overmind is way easier to get into, maybe. Well, at least as complexity increases, it's easier with cerebral and overmind, I think, to understand where do I put my logic as it increases. With impact, it's a little bit more low level, but with more flexibility. But it's also way simpler as an implementation, and also is more compatible with React itself, because a lot has happened to React, like with concurrent mode and all that stuff. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble. But yeah, the docs are pretty okay. This is going to be iterated on probably forever. But yeah. Yeah, so where were we? Yeah, so the impact context is its own like reactive context running outside of React. So in this case, we are consuming some other context, like the notifications feature, which we haven't refactored yet. So we can't really use that, but we could just pass it in as so let's do that. Dispatch notification, let's just call it that. So dispatch notification. So this is the interesting thing about, and this is something we actually learned when we embraced React, is that we have this way of creating, if you think about it, context in React is really just a hook. Or when you combine context and you have the provider, you can think about the value of the context as being a hook. So that's what you kind of see here. Is like we created this little abstraction called create hook context. So instead of like creating the context explicitly, creating your own component provider, which uses the context provider and children and all of that, you just say, you define it like a hook. And what you get back here is the actual like use context thing, but also on use search, you have provider to provide that. So you're providing hooks to the component, to the React application. And that means if you type anything here, those become props on the provider. So you would do like provider, let's see it here. So use search provider would be like dispatch notification would be a property you would have to pass in. So I haven't seen this before, but it's well, I've seen it before, but not in React. It's like we always do like global stores. It's like either you do local component state or you do global state stores. I haven't seen anyone like doing componentry based state management, which is really funny because if you go just like way back to when Angular was released with their like controllers, like you had your HTML and you would define a controller. And that's kind of the same thing. It's like you tie your state management to certain sections of your application instead of choosing local, where you have to pass things as props, or you choose global. Yeah, you can use a context in React to do this, but it's problematic because the reason you go to a context in React is because you need to share state, but then you get into shitty stuff because whatever you change within a React context will cause any consuming component of that context to reconcile. And that's exactly what you don't want. Like you want to encapsulate state in some context, and then based on what the components actually consume from that context should be the reason for it to reconcile. Anyways, I think I write about all that stuff. Let's just call this let's just do any there for now. So we can actually try doing, yeah, so you see this is what happens when you try to do state management in React. It's like you have to use refs and stuff. Cancel search ref. Like, what the hell? And you have to use callback, and you do like search is like an effect of something, like changes to whatever. Which does make sense that, okay, if anything here changes, let's run an effect. Or let's run the search again. It does make sense, but it's, what's it called? It creates, not inference, but, oh, what the hell? What's the term? When you have to do like another jump to understand what's happening. Inversion? No, I forgot what word I'm looking for. But it's like, instead of going to finding like a search function to understand how does this search happen, you go to this effect that just lives somewhere, and that just happens to do a search, and then you have to check the dependency array. Okay, so it does a search when term changes glob debounce dispatch search. Why is that there? And that doesn't need to be there, but it is there because of React linting. And it's like, it's just iffy. I don't like it. So, oh, this is interesting. Ugh, okay. So what we're gonna do is, yeah, Vue and Solid are really good solutions, and I think they solve most things. You have to get into some really complicated stuff to, and even then they can like solve it, but you might not feel like it's you might get an itch, like there must be a better way to solve this. The thing about Solid, though, that I don't like about Solid is that it's, what I love about Solid is that when you write a component, the component body only runs once. Like, it's such a simpler mental model than a component that reconciles like multiple times. And then you have like concurrent mode, and you have strict mode, and things runs twice, and you don't understand why does it run twice, and why does it subscribe and unsubscribe and then subscribe again because of strict mode. Like, there's so much stuff that's hard to understand that doesn't exist in Solid at all. But there's one thing that a reconciliation does, which is way better than Solid, in my opinion. And that is, if you have a component in Solid, you can't do something as simple as if if foo equals bar, return this UI or return this other UI. You can't do that in Solid because there's no reconciliation of the component body. So you rely on having like these specials, show components, switch components, to do this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that's necessarily super bad, but it isn't just JavaScript. And you get into typing issues. Like, the switch component in Solid isn't type safe. It doesn't have the typing of the actual language switch statement. So I think, so Vue and Solid, or at least Solid, is on like the way on the edge of reactivity and doesn't have any type of reconciliation. And then you have React on the other side, which is all reconciliation and no like reactivity. And now we're starting to see these solutions that kind of does both. So if React gets like a really solid, no pun intended, reactive implementation, so that it still has reconciliation at its core for like running components, but you would rather use like reactive primitives like signals to manage state. I think that could be really, really interesting. Anyways, I'm diverging. feel seems attached from state. Yeah, detached rendering from state management. Yeah. I only used Vue with composition API. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of cool to see how Vue was actually able to take that inspiration from React with the hooks and stuff and make that happen in Vue as well. I always love it when we kind of converge on ideas. And that's what's happening now with Signals, right? We're kind of converging on this. Even though Signals has existed for a long time, now we're kind of converging. Okay, should we call a signal? An effect is a way to like observe signals and do something, and so on. The question is more like, how do you expose the functionality, and how do you combine it with UIs, and yeah, how do you define things and so on. Yeah, and the thing about React, it's solid is like, one thing is solid as a library, another thing is the creator. I forgot his name. It's Italian or something. He's so knowledgeable. He interviews a ton of people. He does a shit ton of research on different frameworks and approaches, and so even even if you don't use Solid in an application, just like consuming the content that this guy produces is so insanely valuable. And yeah, it's funny about React not going with signals, and I think they're trying to argue that you don't need it, but that's not true. In my opinion, like even with this forget project they have, because the first step is like, okay, React is slow because you have to memorize everything, and then the React team is like, okay, but we have this project called forget, that's like at compile time it will actually optimize everything and memorize everything for you, so you actually don't have to think about that when you write your code. But that doesn't fix sharing state across your UI, because the only way to do that is to shove that state into a context. And you can memorize as much as you want inside a context, but if some state changes within that context, the context value has to change. Like the reference on the context value has to change for consuming components to reconcile. And that means that any component consuming that context, regardless of what state they're interested in, will reconcile, and you get into performance issues again. So it's just, yeah, at least like at a level of complexity. Of course, it's not like every application's problem. You have to, yeah, get into some serious stuff before that actually becomes a problem. But yeah, it's interesting. It's but it's really nice to see where things are like going. So anyways, let's try to search something. So what's in let's think about how this works. So the way this works is that you might start an explicit search, which I find a little bit weird. Is it because you click the button? Where does it do search? Where is that coming from? And this is another thing, like I can't do like go to references here. Like it doesn't know what this is, which I really don't like about what we're doing at CodeSandbox right now. This is coming from, oh, okay. Why does it have a search ID? That's interesting. Okay, so this is actually an internal thing. So what we could do here is what would we do here? Okay, let's just start doing something. So we have this debounced search. Let's just copy that. Debounced search. And again, like this is really nice because you don't actually have to use callback or anything here. It's like this reactive context scope only runs once, just like with solid, right? It's reactive, which is funny. Library called React and it's not reactive. And then we have debound search, and then let's see. So I guess we would use, let's just try that first. I'm just going to try to just go by my intuition here, and then we are going to, yeah, that's fine. So we're just going to do this actually. Debound search, and then we have search. Oh, we have term.value. So what happens here is that since it's reactive, we are looking at the term.value. So whenever that value changes, this effect will run again. And since there's no reconciliation, we don't have to think about like what parallel universe is this scope in. This debound search can safely just access the current value of these different things here. We don't have to consider that stuff, which is also a huge relief. Yeah, so these are also triggers for, yeah, we should add these later. I just want to kind of implement the actual search here. So I think we're gonna, yeah, so we have the current search that we want to dispose of. And I think, what is that based on? Current cancel search? Oh, it's a disposable. Oh, okay. And then it checks if it's disposed. Yeah. And it sets that, yeah, exactly. Okay, but I think that makes sense. So we would have current search. Yeah, that will be a disposable, or it can be undefined. And what we would do here is, I'm not sure what that search ID is for. Let's keep it around. So if we have a term, we are first going to look for, if we have current search. Did I use the wrong disposable? Which disposable is this? Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's coming from picture client. Disposable, that's the disposable we're going to use. We're going to dispose of that. Yeah, and then set it to undefined. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, maybe that's better. So if we have a current search, we're going to dispose of it and then set it just like it did. Oh, yeah, cancel search ref. What's this? Why does it cancel search ref? Why does it do this different places? Oh, is it because we debounce? Oh yeah, I guess we have to be careful about that. Do we... So, do we want to cancel it before we debounce? I guess we do, since it's being done here. Oh, but this is interesting. Yeah, this change. Yeah, wait a minute. Because we do want the search to re-trigger whenever these things change, right? Yeah, so I really think that this debound search should actually take all the things as arguments, which is, yeah, maybe this isn't that much better. You have like use effect, and like this dependency array is like a kind of a weird thing. But still here you do have this quirkiness that, okay, for this effect to run again, we do have to actually point into all these signals for it to trigger again if they change, which is fine. But you might have done what I was about to do, which is like, okay, let's just do it when we change the value, and then whatever the term, yeah, whatever the glob regex or case sensitivity is, we'll just use what you have. But that means if you change the case sensitivity with an existing search, it won't search again. Then we would have to like trigger the search again here. Yeah, you know what? I think we're gonna drop this, because this is the thing I feel, in my experience, is what has caused the most confusion. I still can't remember the word. Indirection. It's indirection. So this is indirection, right? You as a developer, you want to understand search. So you go into the UI. That's typically where you start as a developer. What's the user experience? So you go to the component that does the search. It changes the search term. Or you could say search. It should be called search. And then, like, it just sets the term. Oh, herregud. Åh. Oj, oj, oj. Du, jeg sitter og streamer. Gud, mann. Ja, ja, greit. Oh my god. Oh, it was my partner. The kids are misbehaving. I have to go. Isn't that typical? Let me just finish that thing. So this is indirection, because as a developer, you hit this search method, you just change the term. How the hell does search happen? And then you look through the code and, oh, there's an effect here. Which, oh, so when I change the term, this effect runs. Oh, okay. So it's just really hard to figure out what triggers search. But if you do it the way I was supposed to now is, when you do search with a term, you actually perform the search immediately. And then when you set case sensitivity, we'll actually perform the search again with the current term. So for every method, you explicitly search. And personally, I think that is way better. Like, you can argue, oh, but you can co-locate it into this beautiful single effect up here. But it's much harder to reason about for the next developer. Arguably. So yeah, if I had more time, I would remove this and we would refactor this so we actually did the explicit search in these different methods. But anyways, I'm going to continue on this, and I think this will be our first feature that will move to impact at CodeSandbox. So that's cool. Anyways, sorry, I have to rewatch when I got startled. Must have looked weird. Anyways, this was fun. Thanks for watching, and thanks for the questions and discussion. I think 2024 is gonna be like in terms of state management and all these frameworks and everything, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So yeah, bye for now.